All right, ladies and gentlemen. So our next topic is Manifest Destiny. Using a little PowerPoint I adapted from Susan Poher out in New York, and I added my own little pieces in here as well. So what did you Manifest Destiny should be in your text and key concept guides to review. But here are a couple of trends. Remember, we had seen the antebellum world. So remember, we have all these new intellectual religious movements. So the Mormons, they're moved west too. They'll be a big part. We have social reforms happening. Both for women, prisons, education, all kind of stuff. We have the Industrial Revolution going on. So remember, put this in context, right? I think there's a context of what's happening here, okay? That's revolution. Better technology, more technology, all those kind of things. We have a new second party system. So we have a more democratic society. Democrats, now the new Whigs are coming up, and we also get now third parties coming, like Know Nothings. And later on, the Free Soilers is being an issue here, too. We have more federal power with the Marshall Courts happening, the McCall v. Maryland. And Marbury v. Madison, Gibbons-Ogden, all these cases where we see more power go to the federal government. We see an increase in national. We see sectionals, but also see nationalism happening too. While we have a sectional time period here, we're talking about the idea of nationalism, and last we see people moving west towards Mississippi. Once you get past the Mississippi line, though, you're going to be moving past Mississippi. That's where we're going to start talking here in terms of the idea of manifest destiny. So this is first coined by a guy named John O'Sullivan, newspaper editor in New York, who coined the term. He says, and I quote, "The right of our manifest destiny is to overspread and possess the whole continent which Providence has given us for the development of a great experiment of liberty and federal development of self-government entrusted to us. It is right such of the tree to the space of air and the earth suitable for full expansion of its principle and destiny of growth." So here we have this idea of romance, adventure, is our providence has given us, okay? The idea that, hey, we did this government experiment, it worked, we should now own this entire continent. Not only are we talking from sea to shining sea, Atlantic to Pacific, but originally it was also going to be from north to south, including Canada, Mexico, Central America, South America, the whole 9 yards. We as America are going to control the whole kit and caboodle, control the entire thing, and that's because we have this idea, okay? We did the experiment of liberty, self-government, all that kind of stuff. We did it, we succeeded, yeehaw. We're going to take over the whole thing now. We're doing this painting a lot here, the American Progress painted in 1872 by John Gast. We looked at it earlier this year too. We see all different parts of this here, the idea of liberty going forward. We're going to talk about this in class, so look at it right now, stare at it for a second. All right, you stared at it, hopefully. All right, think about the ideas that are here. Think about the ideas of this moving west and the ideas of the Industrial Revolution that are exhibited in this painting. Think about in terms of technology. Think about ideas of new inventions. Think about ideas of social protocols, all that kind of stuff. And we're going to bring it back and talk about this in class tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. Now, one problem I had was the post office. And how do you get, as people start moving west, how do you get information out there? And so the creation of the Pony Express. You're moving the mail via horse. So notice who they wanted. They wanted young, skinny, wiry fellows. Now over 18 must be expert riders willing to risk death daily, orphans preferred. $25, which was a hell of a lot of money back then. The idea of Pony Express was young guys could ride the post out to California, out those kind of places, and get back. The idea was here that they would be able to ride out there, find a horse, fresh horse, keep riding. And so it took 10 days to get mail between St. Louis and San Francisco. I'm not sure mail get there in that time now. Think about it, okay? Eventually, they started the telegraph lines out. Eventually, it was a huge thing at the time to get mail out west and have posts go back and forth communication. Notice they orphans preferred. Yeah, a lot of these guys didn't make it. Either they got sick, got killed, a lot of stuff happened to them. Now we start seeing conflicts with Canada, especially early on here in terms of our kind of our manifest destiny, and the idea of Northern was a big deal. Now, we actually had, the only time a war was ever declared by the state was called the Aroostook War in 1839. The whole thing was based around, believe it or not, lumberjacks. The issue is that, so there's this kind of this border up here in around the Aroostook River between Maine and Canada. And the issue is that both areas kind of claim this spot. And the U.S. kicked a bunch of lumberjacks out from Canada. Well, Canada said, no, that's our land. So now they almost have an armed conflict. Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, Congress called up 50,000 men and $10 million to pay for a war to fight over this little chunk of Maine between the U.S. and Britain, who at the time ruled Canada. In the end, they made a treaty. General Winfield Scott arranged a truce. They got a treaty drawn up, and we have this actual border now made here on this part of Maine. And the U.S. got the area by the Aroostook River. But still, it's one of these first times where we have this question of boundaries taking place. Now, Texas plays a big role in this thing, too. Those who go to Texas know Texas is a little different kind of deal. Texas, at one point, was its own independent country. So, Texas was originally a, a state of Mexico, okay? And at one point, they decided to declare independence. Now, backtrack. Why are they declaring independence? We have a couple of really key figures, guys including Stephen F. Austin, who the city of Austin is named after, Sam Houston, who the city of Houston is named after, go figure, right? Become really big key figures in the Texas independence. Now, Stephen F. Austin was getting an impresario. Essentially, he was an American settler in Texas who got a big chunk of land, very, very cheap, and could then grow stuff on that land or do cattle ranching on that land. And so, basically, in the county of Texas, he got 177 acres of farm, or 4,000 acres for ranching. And tons of Americans are like, holy crap, I will take that deal easily. And people was left for Texas. People would actually leave their homes. People have said, gone to Texas. And they're gone. In Texas, there are two people. You have the English-speaking whites and you have the Tejanos. Tejanos were the native Spanish speakers in Texas. And in fact, by 1835, 1836 or so, there were more English-speaking whites in Texas than there were Tejanos, who were the actual native Spanish speakers of Texas, Native Americans as well. Well, the difference is this. U.S. settlers were all cotton and sugar farmers. They went to their land for farming, or even for ranching for that matter too. And a lot of times they were from the South. They needed more land. And they went across the border in Texas. They brought their slaves with them. This was a problem. Mexico, as with most Latin American countries, had declared slavery illegal in 1824. And Mexico's like, hey, Americans, we're glad you're here. Problem, you can't have slaves. That was an issue, okay? And so they basically said no more settlers could come over if they have slaves. Problem is that they didn't stop. They kept coming and kept bringing their slaves with them. And so Mexico decided to seal the borders off to Texas since nobody else could come in. People still came in. Even though the borders are sealed up, they couldn't seal the borders enough. And you have at least 1,000 U.S. citizens entering Texas to settle every single month. They put the Mexican army on the border, and they couldn't keep people out. So here you have people trying to get into Mexico. Think about that today, and think about all the current issues and the current politics and Donald Trump, all that kind of stuff. Here, Mexico is building a wall, if you will, a wall so to keep Americans out of Texas and out of Mexico. And because as always more and more America comes in, Stephen F. Austin asks for Texas, and Texans ask for independence, gives that Declaration of Independence to President Antonio de Lopez Santa Anna, and said, hey, we want freedom because we have rights to freedom. And Austin was then imprisoned. Later on, they decide to make their own state. They fight a whole little civil war against Mexico. Famous battles at the Alamo, which was actually the biggest loss. But later on, you see battles at places like Goledad and at San Jacinto, and other battles that happen where the Texans eventually rout the Mexicans and get their own country, the Republic of Texas, also known as the Lone Star Republic. And obviously there's big stories about Davy Crockett's last stand, the Alamo, you can read about that, where they stayed and that kind of stuff. But still we have Texas becoming an independent country, and people flocking to Texas, where now in Texas slavery is legal, and they have the idea of slavery. Now, Texas didn't want to be its own little republic because they're pretty small. Okay, I mean, they're big, but they weren't like a country big. Okay, they couldn't support themselves necessarily. They want to be annexed to the United States as a new state. Annexed means being added. And so the big question was, can Texas be annexed? Because Mexico's like, that's not cool. Because then the question is, did the U.S. plan it? And it would look too hot. So things are a little salty right now between Mexico and the United States over this whole Texas issue. Not to mention that, U.S. is kind of eyeing up California as well. And so there's kind of this little saltiness going on between U.S. and Mexico over Texas and even over possibility of taking over California. Enter our president here, a guy by the name of James K. Polk. Now, in between Martin Van Buren and Polk, you have William Henry Harrison. William Henry Harrison was this guy who campaigned on this big deal of hard cider and log cabin. He really wasn't. He was kind of a sissified dandy, to be honest with you, who hadn't lived in a log cabin in his life. But he won anyway because he beat Tecumseh and Native Americans. Anyway, long story short, with William Henry Harrison, he gives his inaugural speech, okay, and he gives an inaugural speech in the middle of a rainstorm with no overcoat on, gets pneumonia, dies in office. Okay, the guy he ran with was a man named John Tyler. The little phrase was "Tippecanoe and Tyler too." Tyler was an idiot. Okay, he couldn't do much, and he was kind of one of his little footnotes in history. Anyway, so when Tyler's election comes up, they don't even run him as president, and James K. Polk, or James Knox Polk, if you will, is the guy who is up for the Democrats. Now, Polk is running on an expansionist policy. His big phrase, 54-40 or fight. This would be the border between Canada and the U.S. Solidifying that border, expanding land for the U.S., also getting Oregon Country and California. We're going to expand the territory, he says. He goes against the Whigs and Henry Clay, running on his whole idea of Americanism and the idea of nationalism and internal improvements, those kind of things, being a Whig, being the non-Democrat. So you kind of see the two sides running here. Now, you kind of see where these groups are, kind of campaign flags. We see this idea of the beast in Texas with, the idea that Texas can't carry Polk to the presidency. The idea of Texas trying to say, hey, I wish I had rode a different horse. I wish I'd can I be if we get Texas in, maybe he'll be elected president. I love these cartoons, by the way. These creepy beast things are awesome. We kind of see the whole drawing here with the idea of Polk kind of carrying this expansionist policy. Well, here are the results we have. So we see Polk does win, beats Clay the Whig, about 2/3 vote. Okay, he gets in the Electoral College. Notice where most of the votes are. Boom, right here in the West, where everybody's starting to move out here towards this direction. Whig Clay carries his kind of home area right in here, Kentucky, Tennessee, and live on the East Coast as well. Here's what Polk wants to do. One, lower the tariff. Lower that tariff down, make people happy in the South. Okay. Big thing. He wants to resolve that Oregon boundary dispute. What's U.S. territory? What's Canada territory? Because currently they're kind of fighting over the whole deal. Okay. He wants to make an independent treasury. So this would be the whole issue of the national bank, that kind of stuff. And lastly, he says we're going to acquire California. Gosh darn it. He's saying this in 1844. So we see between 1840 and 1860. 250,000 people head out west and settle different places. So they settle from Oregon, California, Utah is a Mormon population heading out that way. Big spikes here and people moving out west over the overland trails. See the Oregon Trail, very famous. You played the game and got dysentery and died. Awesome. People settle these trails, kind of Conestoga wagons, load everything with cattle with steers to pull the wagons. Across trail. Basically, they bet everything on this whole deal for a better life, a chance for free land or cheap land or free land out west, and a chance to start over, not be in a city or not be stuck on a small farm, somewhere they can't expand. Different trails. See westward here, we see the Mormon Trail goes to Salt Lake City when the Mormons left Nauvoo, Illinois, and head out west here to Salt Lake City. It was kind of a big stepping off point, though not people doubt the Mormons very well. Oregon Trail going up here to the Oregon country. The California Trail branched off here to California, Northern California, where San Francisco is kind of like. You also have the Spanish Trail going to Southern California, and also some dipping down here into New Mexico and those areas as well. As people went all over the place trying to get this different trail routes. If you went off the trail, it's kind of dangerous. As a Donner Party, they took a different trail going to Sutter's Fort out in California. And they actually got lost, stuck in a blizzard in the mountains, and pretty much all died. They actually had to resort to cannibalism. Of 83 members, they're half died. They actually resort to eating each other to survive. Awesome. And some of these guys later on chastised for being cannibals out in the wilderness. But it was dangerous, and the Donner Party is definitely an example of how you bet everything on this, and not everybody made out west. It wasn't all fun and games. Not everybody, and you could just sit and shoot deer and stuff like you did in the game Oregon Trail. It was dangerous, and a lot of people I want to say a third maybe of people who went out west didn't make it because of disease, injury, that kind of stuff that happened. The big fight here between Oregon and U.S. though is over this area of Oregon country, where it's everyone go out there for free land. Originally, the British and the U.S. co-owned this area, if you will, and they decided to try and find a way to make this U.S. territory. And one of Polk's views was to make this happen. His idea of 54-40 was this line here: make sure we got our part of the land, and we actually ended up gaining all this right here. We just kind of dip a little bit down on Fort Victoria. So this is Washington State, Oregon. And we have this idea of Oregon Trail around the Columbia River where the U.S. gets that land and becomes U.S. and British, not longer a co-owned kind of deal. The last thing we're going to talk about here is the Bear Flag Republic. So now this is also happening in California. California is Mexican territory at this point, but there are enough Americans moving out there and settling for free, mind you, that they start kind of going against Spain. And Mexico is a little worried about all these Americans settling. They're like, oh my God, they're going to settle here and they're going to make an army and they're going to take us over, and oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. So Mexico shuts off the settlers into California, and the American settlers revolt under a guy named John C. Fremont. They revolt against Spanish, make their own thing called the Bear Flag Republic, which they said they want to add on to the United States as well. So it's another example of this conflict. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in class tomorrow.